Anything's possible, right?
Jedi. You're a Jedi, huh? I'm a fucking Sith Lord, bitch!
Hello.
How's it going?
This is my friend Eric Casey, who, if you've been watching the Star Wars reviews we've been doing, he's been a guest in a lot of these. Although, technically, I would be a guest because this is your house we're in right now.
It's your review.
Yes, it's my review. But the film we are reviewing is Star Wars The Force Awakens, which this nerd has on Blu-ray and 3D Blu-ray or something like that.
Yeah, I got the Blu-ray 3D because there was like specific special features that wasn't included when it first got released. So I had to. Fuck you, Disney. Anyway.
Okay. Well, this is the 7th film in the Star Wars franchise, unless you count the 2008 animated film Star Wars The Clone Wars, which I never seen that movie myself, and I decided, so I decided to exclude it from this series of reviews. Now, the film came out in 2015, 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, which was the 3rd film of the prequel trilogy, but this is picking up from the continuity of the original series, or the original trilogy. And this is also the first film of Disney's current lineup of Star Wars movies. Now, at a certain point, George Lucas sold Lucasfilm to Disney. When was that? Was that 2012 or 2013? Do you know?
No, that was maybe, I think it might have been like 2014. Let me get my phone. And so when they got the rights, they were just like, oh, actually I was wrong completely. You were actually right. They bought the rights for $4 billion in 2012. God, that was really that far? That long ago? Holy shit. Wow. So I was wrong, 2012. But still, sold it for $4 billion, and then Disney is like, let's crank out Star Wars. And that's what led to Force Awakens.
Now, the film was co-written and directed by J.J. Abrams, who, prior to this, produced TV shows like Felicity, Alias, Lost, Fringe, and the Stephen King adaptation, 11/22/63. He also directed films like Mission Impossible 3, the 2009 Star Trek reboot, and its 2013 sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness. He also directed the 2011 coming-of-age science fiction film Super 8. He also produced Cloverfield, and he would go on to produce the Cloverfield sequels, and he's currently producing the show Castle Rock, which is based on the fictional town of Castle Rock from several of Stephen King's stories. And the film is also co-written by Lawrence Kasdan, who also co-wrote The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and he also wrote or co-wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. But what do you think of Star Wars The Force Awakens, or Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens, whichever you want to call it?
Kind of a mixed bag, to be quite honest with you, but I actually lean toward defending Force Awakens to an extent. I'm not going to say it's a good movie, considering that they basically, pretty much, kind of pretty much rehashed the original trilogy storyline and just shoved it into this movie as the plot line. But I like what they did with the character. I like what Abrams set up with the characters and everything. I liked Finn's beginning, where he was a stormtrooper that goes rogue. I thought his stuff was done, especially at the beginning, was really well done. Rey and the mystery surrounding her origin story and everything. Mainly those two. Yeah, pretty much it's an okay movie. It's solid for what it needs to be, and I'll go into more detail about that later, which is why I actually defend this movie to an extent. And I don't think it deserves the hate that it does get, in my opinion.
And you see, for me, when I first saw this movie back in 2015, I didn't like it. I was very underwhelmed by it, and I was like, I didn't hate it, but I was like, so meh. even though I hate when people refer to movies as meh, but that's basically how I felt about this.
Meh.
But I rewatched it again for this review, and wow, it's amazing what a little time and a second viewing can do. Because my opinions have basically done a complete 180. I actually really like this movie, and I really do see what Abrams was going for. And it's funny, because I didn't like this movie when I first saw it, but, like, I think the movie has a lot of heart, honestly. Like, you could tell Abrams has a real passion for this material, and he really is invested in giving us a good Star Wars movie and a good follow-up to that original trilogy. And it's funny, like, I still like his Star Trek reboots, but you could tell those are definitely more commercial, and he's just sort of doing that for a quick buck, whereas this, you could tell his heart's really into it.
I agree. I have my opinions about Into Darkness, but hey.
Now, the plot of The Force Awakens is it's set 30 years after the events of Return of the Jedi. Now, during that period, a new galactic empire called the First Order has risen from the ashes of the old one, and the First Order bows down to an alien being called Snoke, and Snoke's right-hand man is Kylo Ren. Now, at a certain point, Luke Skywalker, who is the last Jedi, went missing, and the First Order believes that if they can find and destroy Skywalker, then they've won. Luke's sister Leia is now the leader of the resistance against the First Order, and she's also trying to find him as well, and one of Leia's top pilots, a man named Poe, meets a man on a planet called Jakku, who has a map to Luke's whereabouts. Unfortunately, they're attacked by Imperial forces, and Poe is captured. However, he managed to put the map inside a droid named BB-8, and BB-8 managed to escape. Eventually, BB-8 meets a scavenger named Rey, who was abandoned on this planet by her parents when she was a little girl. Eventually, a stormtrooper who turned against the Order helps Poe escape, and Poe ends up calling him Finn, and Finn and Poe end up getting separated, and Finn ends up meeting Rey and BB-8. Eventually, Finn, Rey, and BB-8 end up getting targeted by Imperial forces, but they manage to escape from the planet on a ship that Star Wars fans would recognize as the Millennium Falcon. Eventually, they meet Han Solo and Chewbacca, and they realize that they now must get this map to the Resistance, and throughout the film, Rey starts to realize that she can control the Force, and she has the potential to become a Jedi. Now, the film stars Daisy Ridley as Rey, John Boyega as Finn, Oscar Isaac as Poe. Lupita Nyong'o, if I'm saying her last name right, portrays the character of Maz Kanata. Adam Driver plays Kylo Ren. Domhnall Gleeson plays General Hux. And Andy Serkis does the motion capture for Snoke. Also, Max von Sydow, who most people might remember from The Exorcist, has a small role in this movie. And of course, Harrison Ford reprises his role as Han Solo, Carrie Fisher reprises her role as Leia, Peter Mayhew returns as Chewbacca, Anthony Daniels reprises his role as C-3PO. R2-D2 does come back in this movie, however he's, and this is a slight spoiler, he's kind of lifeless throughout the film. And Mark Hamill does return as Luke Skywalker, however he doesn't appear until the end of the film. The movie also features cameos from people like Simon Pegg, Warwick Davis, and Daniel Craig even makes a cameo appearance in this film as a stormtrooper. But, what do you think of, like, the acting in the film and the characters in the film?
Well, like I mentioned before, Rey and Finn, I think, are standouts. I like what was done with them, and the performers, Daisy Ridley and the rest of the cast, I think, do a really, really good job with the material. I'll even say it's, I mean, I don't want to say it's really well written, because, again, you could say that, but it's also ripping off other stuff from the previous movies and everything, so I'm hesitant to say really well written. But for, like, the character moments, I would say, was there were great moments, like when Han and Chewie enter the Falcon and they're like, Chewie, we're home. You know, like, stuff like that is just like, just perfect.
Very fanboyish for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the best way you could describe it. There's no other way to say it. But it's true, though. Like, because, yeah, it is fanboyish, but, you know, you haven't seen that. You haven't seen, like, Han and Chewie in, like, over 20, 30 years. You know, yes, the fanboyism, yeah. But in this case, I actually defend it to an extent, and it was actually very gratifying. You know, and also Carrie Fisher does a great job. Harrison Ford, they all do a great job.
Yeah, I will say about the character of Rey, I think she's a fantastic character. Once again, when I first saw the movie, like the whole thing, I was kind of underwhelmed by her character, but watching it again, I think she's a very good character. Like, her story is very, like, compelling, and she's sympathetic because she was abandoned by her parents when she was a child, and, like, I think she has, and the whole, like, Mary Sue thing, like, a lot of people accuse the character of being sort of a Mary Sue. That, she is, but it didn't really bother me, honestly.
Yeah, like, that's one of the things that I'm kind of, like, on the fence about. I do kind of agree, that even in the first one, she's kind of a Mary Sue, and it doesn't really make any sense that, even with Kylo Ren injured at the end, like, the perfect example is her beating Kylo Ren at the end. I understand he was really injured and everything, but Rey didn't really have any experience whatsoever. She didn't really know what she was doing. And you could even say that, oh, she had some experience with her, you know, pole or whatever that she had in the beginning of the movie. But, I mean, Kylo Ren was trained by Luke Skywalker. Even though he was injured, come on. You know, in my opinion, you can't really defend that. Even though it was a pretty good, you know, lightsaber fight. It was awesome.
Oh, it was awesome,
not denying it. Yeah, no, I'm not denying that. But just for, like, story and, like, being able to believe it, it was kind of subpar, if I want to be devil's advocate, with, like, the direction and, like, the execution of it in the context of the storyline. Because I would say, like, that's a lot of things that happens in both these movies, is that there's a lot of great moments, but they're kind of taken back a bit because of, like, the script inconsistencies, I think. Like I said, with, like, Rey's lack of experience versus Kylo Ren's experience, where Kylo Ren should have mopped the floor with her in a lightsaber fight, in my opinion.
Alright. And then I think Finn arguably had the most compelling story arc in this movie.
Hands down.
He's a stormtrooper who realizes what we're doing is wrong.
Yeah.
And, like, the fact that you find out that he was basically taken from his family when he was a child, like, he's an extremely sympathetic character, and once again, I think his story arc in the film is easily the most compelling.
Yeah.
And if you want to read a possible, like, subtext into that, like, okay, he's a black man who refuses to be a slave, if you want to, like, read into that to a certain extent.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I do want to mention the character of General Hux, who, in my opinion, was kind of a scarier villain than Kylo Ren, because Gleeson basically played this character like a Nazi.
Yeah.
He's pretty much a Nazi in this movie.
Pretty power-hungry driven and everything, yeah.
And actually that scene where he's giving that speech to all those stormtroopers is fucking chilling. And if you think of, like, a lot of the subtext here, if you look at, like, the First Order or the Empire or anything as a metaphor for the Nazi Party, his performance is actually pretty haunting, because he really does play this role as an SS officer in a lot of ways.
No, I agree. I think, again, with the material given, all the actors do a really good job. I just may not agree with, like, some of the things, which I'm sure we'll get into when we get into the detailed version of this. But for characters in general, the actors do a great job. J.J. Abrams directing the actors, they really put in a great performance, everybody. And that was nice to see.
Yeah.
Considering the prequels.
Now, I want to cut to a few of my friends' short reviews on this movie. When we come back, we're going to talk more about this film and get into a more detailed discussion on the film, I would say.
I've seen, of course, you know, I saw the prequels when they came out, of course, and I really don't have anything bad to say about them. I don't really have anything good to say about them. They just seem to sort of exist But I don't have a particular hatred or for them at all. They just kind of exist. I have seen the new J.J. Abrams Star Wars, and those films I do have a big problem with. I think those films are sort of pastiches of other films. They don't really do anything. Like the Force Awakens basically is just the first movie. It's Star Wars again, just remade, and I don't think there was really, they added anything great to it, They didn't seem to... They might have gotten the look right, but there's just not the spirit to it. It's not the same. It seems to me so, and fans seem to love it, which I don't understand. I don't understand why. Maybe it's the nostalgia. Maybe a lot of these fans are younger and they didn't have the initial experience, so they're getting the experience now of it and enforcing it a little bit, But again, I think it's just I find the J.J. Abrams Star Wars films are just very cynical in some ways, which is weird because I know in some ways they're trying to put forward a more inclusive Star Wars universe and a more sort of positive Star Wars universe. But it's cynical in the sense of that he's sort of exploiting fans, their need for these films, I think, and he's not really giving you anything new, I think the spin-offs films were good, better than the sort of the main canonical films that have come out since then. But still, I think that more and more these are being, I see these as just money making, not any, the artistry is gone, and it's just basically money making, for Disney and for the corporations, right? So movies are so expensive to make now. Movies have a hard time sort of, getting back their budgets or even making more than that. Why not use a sort of tried and true brand and just saturate the market, saturate everything with Star Wars? I mean, I think there was a TV commercial with the, selling cars, Star Wars car or something like that, like they're using Star Wars. It seems like such a cynical money-making grab, whereas when you go to the original Star Wars movie, it was like, George Lucas, I mean, obviously I think he wanted to make money, but I think that there was an artistry there too, that there was this hunger that he wanted to sort of bring his vision to the screen no matter what it costs, or no matter what he would get out of it. He just wanted to bring that vision to the screen. I just don't see that with J.J. Abrams. I think he's a very cynical, very calculated, very exploitive filmmaker in terms of fans. But that's what fans want. I guess they're going to keep buying it.
So we got the original trilogy, we got the prequel trilogy. And although some of the movies were good and some were the very, very polar opposite of good, the saga was complete. 1 through 6. You got complete stories. Complete saga. After episode 6, everything looked good. It looked like evil was vanquished. And Lucasfilms made a lot of money. Still got the expanded universe with the comics and the books and everything, the video games. And things were really great for Star Wars. At a point, Disney looked at it. They looked at Marvel and they're like, you should get a twin. We'll give you a twin. Another money-making twin for you, Marvel. And they bought Star Wars, and not only did they get Marvel, they got Lucasfilms. So Disney knows how to make money. They know how to make like movies like Lone Ranger and Wrinkle of Time, which are pure shit, but they are smart. They know how to invest and make good investments. So they got Star Wars, and with that was the promise of a new trilogy and new movies, and that was really exciting. It's Disney. It can't be as bad as George Lucas. He's done now. He's gone with the series, so it has to be good, right? Right? Spoilers, yes, it actually is good, except for the expanded universe, where everything got like, totally retconned and everything, but yeah. As disappointing as that is, I mean, I'd love to have Force Unleashed, that type of video game, be canon. But, you know what, that's a rant for another day. We're getting new Star Wars movies, very exciting. So in 2015, we got Episode 7, The Force Awakens, a sequel to Episode 6. And we got the promise of Leia returning, and Han Solo, and Chewbacca, and everyone. And I'm going to sum up the movie quickly. It was a very fun, exciting movie. A lot of nostalgia was played off. It was a pretty play-it-safe movie for the most part with that in mind. They pretty much gave the same story as Episode 4. But it was still very well executed. They used practical effects with the CG. So the CG wasn't always perfect, but they used practical effects too. Very fun movie. A good introduction to characters of Rey and Finn, very likable characters. And Kylo Ren, who was a very interesting villain because he wasn't typical. He was a man-child, and that's interesting. It's different, right? I guess Anakin Skywalker is similar, but that Kylo Ren, he was something else. I mean, with the chest, big chest. That's for the next movie.
Absolutely love Force Awakens. People bitch about it because it's nostalgia bait and kind of like Return. It's basically another remake of New Hope. But I think what helps it get along is these are really great new characters. I love Poe, I love Finn, I love Rey. And I love that it's very much Han's movie. Like the way that they've structured it, it's very much centered around him. He's kind of our link to what happened in the original trilogy. And then obviously Leia comes in later on. And Kylo... You know, initially, I think people were really against him because they felt he was like an emo, whiny bitch. And I don't really agree with that. I never did. I think he's got a lot of rage in him. And it's rage that comes from kind of his conflict between what he's decided he wants to become and what he used to be. And also later, as we find out in Last Jedi, the fact that almost on impulse, Luke was going to kill him in his sleep. So yeah, obviously, you know, the context for that was provided a little bit later, but yeah, I like Kylo as a villain, and I like that he is a Darth Vader fanboy. Because, I mean, he's wearing an apparatus for no fucking reason. Like, you could tell he's doing it to emulate Vader, you know. There's no reason to have that mask on. I guess you could say it's a war paint type thing, where he's, like, trying to be intimidating. But, you know, it's a knick-knack, if anything. So yeah, I love this one a whole lot. Maz Kanata, such a great addition to the franchise. I think she is, when they came up with Jar Jar, they wanted to come up with like a cool signature character. And I think like Maz is more along the lines of something that they wanted, like this kind of quirky side character who you liked a lot, but wasn't necessarily integral to the plot, but also like, you know, it's good to see her in it. That's what they wanted for Jar Jar, and that's what they got with her. And it's so fucking cool. They got an actress like Lupita Nyong'o playing her. So yeah, I like this one a lot. I don't really mind that it kind of preys on our like love of the original, because that's sort of what we wanted at that point, especially after all those years of bitching about the prequels. So yeah, I love Force Awakens.
After that experience, when they announced they were making The Force Awakens, I was a little wary because, you know, I had gone into the prequels with excitement and been disappointed. But because this was coming after the original trilogy and they were bringing back, you know, some of the original players, you know, as it got closer, I started to get very excited. And when I saw it, The Force Awakens did not disappoint me. To me, it brought back all the joy and excitement and thrilling adventure from the original trilogy. Like, I felt like the makers of this film got it. They understood what people loved about those movies, and they gave it to us. A lot of people complained that it just seemed like the first movie remade. I didn't feel like that. I felt like they took the elements that worked and gave me a new story using those familiar elements. I thought the new characters were awesome. I liked that, you know, for the most part, they, again, chose actors that were not well known. And I loved the, you know, return of Leia and Han. Luke was only, you know, a glimpse at the end. But I particularly enjoy the whole Han Solo Chewbacca segments. I thought Kylo Ren was a great villain. A lot of people complained that he just seemed like a petulant child. To me, that's what made him work. He wasn't some like larger than life villain, but he was just a petulant child who had tantrums. Like, to me, those kind of people in real life are the ones you really have to look out for. And I thought it was very smart to use that kind of a villain. I just thought it was so exciting. The new characters were great. The old characters were great. And much like the original film, I was just having a great time. I was having a blast. And early in the film, there's that moment where they first reveal the Millennium Falcon. And I wanted to cheer. I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. And when that film ended, because I did see that in the theater, the audience did, in fact, cheer. They actually stood up and started clapping, which was, pretty cool. And I just really think they did a great job, and I thought Rey was a great heroine, so my hat's off to them. I loved it.
The new ones, I was really shocked when they announced that there were new Star Wars films coming out, because I thought after Revenge of the Sith that, I'm like, I guess that's it, no more Star Wars films forever, but then in 2013 they announced them, like, yes, I'm excited, especially they brought back the original cast, which I was excited about. And when I first saw it in the theater, like, I saw it like a midnight opening, I loved it, I was excited, but at the time, like, I was excited, I was like all jazzed up, because I'm like, it's a new Star Wars film, but watching it, I mean, it's not really a terrible film, I just wish they'd done something original with it, rather than, like, copying the first movie. I mean, I like the characters, I liked Rey, I liked Finn, and Paul were good characters. And also, my other complaint, too, is, like, where's Luke Skywalker, my favorite character of the series?
I'm saving him for the end, man.
Which, again, that was understandable, but at the same time, I really wanted to see Luke in it for at least maybe, like, the second half hour where they find him and he helps and comes to save the day.
Well, we're back, and, needless to say, in this part of the video, we are going to be getting into some plot spoilers. Okay, I'm going to say it right up front.
Everything down.
Yeah. Right up front, Kylo Ren is, you find out in the film, is actually the son of Han and Leia.
Spoilers.
Yeah. And that's another thing where, like, I'll admit, when I first saw the movie, I was like, I just shrugged my shoulders at that, and I really felt no emotion when I first saw the film.
Yeah.
At the scene where he kills Han Solo. I was like,
really? You felt nothing?
No, I didn't get, maybe, it was sort of, there's something turned me off about Adam Driver's performance, and I think he's a good actor, but there was something about the character, how he was written, or at least how I felt the first time I saw it.
Okay.
Watching it again, yeah, I do get, that is a very emotional moment, but once again, it's something I kind of needed to ruminate on, I would say. Just the first time I saw it, it didn't do anything for me.
Because when I first watched it, I kind of got this vibe that, like, he was like, even though he was experienced, it was like someone who gained some experience and thought just that some experience made him like a complete badass, like on the top tier guy, when he has a whole lot more learning to do and doesn't realize it. So he's kind of a whiny little bitch on purpose. In fact, a lot of reviewers were saying that Kylo Ren is what Anakin Skywalker should have been if you played the whiny bitchy Jedi right.
Alright.
And I completely agree with that. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Excuse me. So that's the kind of direction that I took with it, where he's just an immature brat that doesn't understand what he's into right now. And, yeah, like, Kylo Ren was pretty much one of the best parts in Force Awakens, I would say. I think he was a more interesting villain, too.
Alright.
You know?
Once again, it's just one of those deals where I kind of need to think about it more, but yeah, his character worked a lot more for me watching the film a second time.
I can't. Even after all the years with Han Solo, you felt nothing when he died?
Well, I think it was also, I kind of got the vibe that Harrison Ford didn't really seem like he wanted to be there, because I know he never really took Star Wars that seriously.
Well, since Empire.
Yeah.
that is a valid point.
I don't know, so, like, but once again, my opinions of this film have changed watching it a second time.
I would say, as, you know, Harrison Ford as a person, I would agree with you, but performance-wise, like, he seemed like he wanted to be there. Like, some reviewers were saying, like, this was Harrison Ford's best performance in over, like, 30 years.
Alright.
I disagree with that, but...
Well, I would argue he did a better job when he came back as Deckard in Blade Runner 2049, but that's a whole nother
that's a whole nother thing. But, no, like, I think it was good. It was a really emotional moment. And, again, like, all those years leading up to it is just,
yeah.
It's heart-wrenching.
Now, we probably should have talked about this more when we were discussing, like, the characters and stuff, but would you say Rey is just a because I've heard some people say, oh, she's just a female Luke Skywalker, but I would argue there's enough different about her character where you could say, no, she's her own character.
I would say she is her own character. In fact, she's kind of almost completely opposite to Luke, other than, like, you know, Jakku, Desert Planet, you know, leaves with the rebels and joins them and helps them and trains to be Jedi. Like, all that stuff is similar, but, like, when we say character, we're talking about, like, their personality. Goodbye, lights.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell happened there.
I think the battery died.
Oh. Well, damn you for not changing the battery.
Yeah, I guess. Give me 1 minute. And let there be light. Ah. Stay there, you cunt. There you go.
You know what sucks about that? Now I don't even remember what we were talking about.
You asked me about Rey and how she was similar to Luke Skywalker. So, yeah, like I was saying before the lights went out, she is her own character. In fact, I would even make the argument that she's almost the complete opposite, besides, like, where the characters met up and stuff. But when we say character, we're talking about, like, their personality, you know? And personality-wise, Luke was, you know, whiny, bitchy, immature.
He was, yeah.
And Rey...
But I was going to go to Tashi Station and whatever he said.
Yeah. Where Rey is, like, abandoned and kind of self-driven in some ways, but there's something, again, that mystery behind why she was on Jakku to begin with and who her parents are. Some theories out there are like she's Obi-Wan's kid, which would be interesting. I would agree there is some similarities, but I disagree that she's a complete Luke Skywalker ripoff. She is her own character. You know, she is her own character rather than what other people may say, and I'm sure we'll get into that that reason later, eventually.
Yeah.
But she's far. I would say she's far more complex as a character, as compared to she's just a strong female character. There's more to it to that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention this also when we were talking about, like, the characters in the film, but I actually really, really liked Finn and Poe's relationship in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was such a... I know some people theorize that maybe there's
gay.
Yeah, which I wouldn't be opposed to that, but it's a bromance.
It's a bromance. Like, it doesn't matter if they're gay or not, but to me it came across as a bromance. I don't really see why... I feel like if they do go in that direction, it's kind of forcing it, in my opinion, but that's, I mean, it doesn't, does it really add to anything if they, you know, start dating?
No, not really.
Exactly,
it's just a really, like, nice bromance.
Yeah, I'm not against, like, gay characters or anything, but it doesn't add really anything to Poe or Finn's character, really. There you go.
I've heard some people say that Poe is sort of like the stand-in for Han Solo.
I kind of agree with it, but again, he makes it his own character. I don't agree with that.
I don't, personally.
Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter. He makes it... The actor makes Poe his own anyway. It doesn't matter. You know? Again, these characters, besides the original trilogy, the trio original trilogy...
the real ones.
The real ones. You know, the new characters stand out, and in my opinion, they make the characters their own, even if they're, you know, this setting is kind of ripped off from everything else. Yeah. Well, what do you think of, like, the storyline and like the ripping off and everything? What's your side of that?
Yeah, you see, when I was watching it again, yes, Abrams has taken a lot of stuff from the original trilogy, but he's kind of... Yeah, but he's combining stuff from all three films into one movie to a certain extent.
Yeah.
I still feel like he managed to make it its own thing, its own story. Like, yes, okay, towards the end where, like, okay, they gotta destroy the Star Killer, you know, it's like, okay, it's taken off of, at the end of the original Star Wars, where they gotta destroy the Death Star, but I still saw it as its own story, its own thing. It still felt... For me, it still felt like the logical continuation of Return of the Jedi.
In some aspects, yes, but I somewhat disagree with you a little bit, because a lot of the problems that I have with it is like just kind of the setting where Force Awakens starts off, like the remnants of the Empire being as powerful as they are, where this takes place like how many years after the fall of the Empire? Technically,
it's supposed to be 30.
Yeah,
apparently.
So 30 years, and the First Order has maintained, or because they say that the First Order is remnants of the Empire that rose again, and it's like the Empire fell in Return of the Jedi. Over time, I would think they would start losing power and everything. And so, to me, it doesn't really make any sense how the first, pretty much everything's got reset and placed back into where the originals were. And I think that was one of the biggest missteps, where the First Order is more powerful than the Rebels. I think the Rebellion the role should have been reversed this time around.
All right.
And I think that would have been a decent way of taking something from the original but switching it and making it a little bit different, where the Rebels are in the Empire's shoes, and the Empire are the ones that are like, scrounging up everything they can. But this can show like a different side of the Empire technically, and show, because one of the things that we haven't really got to see with the Rebels, to my understanding, is that the Rebels were like animals when fighting the Empire. They hated these guys, and they wanted to like annihilate them. And so now this was an opportunity to kind of role reverse and kind of show like how cutthroat the Empire is when they're like backed into a corner and everything. And I think that would have made like Kylo Ren and General Hux a little more interesting too, because they're, as a result, being like the faces of this new First Order Empire. They're the ones that are trying to keep it all together, and the pressures weighing on them and all that. Like that, you could have, I think, dove into some interesting characteristics with those characters with that idea in mind. And that's just one of the things. Like, well, I would say that's the biggest thing, though. I think that was a huge misstep, where there was just like, just purposely just taking what the original had, and putting it into this. But I understand why this is, and I've talked to you off camera about this. But pretty much, the reason why the film is like this is because Force Awakens' job is to reintroduce Star Wars back into the field of the original movies. That's why it was so blatant with everything that they did. The Empire versus the Rebels, Jedi lightsabers, and X-Wings and AT-STs and all that stuff. Starkiller Base, all that had to... It didn't necessarily have to be in there, but for what J.J. Abrams and Disney Star Wars were trying to accomplish, that's what this movie had to be, and that's why they did it exactly how they did it, unfortunately. But that's why I kind of am on this like wish-washy sort of defense of it, but also want to criticize it to the point where you could have set up something interesting even with the little elements, you know what I mean? And that's what really disappoints me about Force Awakens, is that I get why they did what they did, but potentially they could have set up something that could have been explored really, like a really interesting setup, from the Empire perspective. And then considering what happens in Last Jedi, I think my scenario would have benefited Last Jedi when we get to there. Well, what do you think after my rambling? Do you agree? Do you agree? Disagree? What do you think?
I agree with your part that it kind of needed to play it safe. I hate to say it, but it kind of did. And like, once again, like, I keep going back to how when I first saw this movie, I didn't like it. Yeah. And that was part of the reason why I didn't like it, was because it was playing it too safe. But now after reevaluating the film, I think what it is Abrams had probably one of the most daunting jobs out there. I mean, his job was to save a franchise that in a lot of people's opinion, the creator of the franchise kind of destroyed with the prequels.
Yes.
And I think he knew that if he tried anything that strayed too far from the path,
Yeah.
People probably would have put hits out on him.
Yeah. If he went too far, but that's what I was saying. Like, if you like swap the roles of the rebels with the First Order, where they were like the ones on top instead of the First. Like, I think you could have gotten away with something like that, and I think it would have been sort of I think it would have made it the new movies even more interesting, in my opinion. But no, I echo the same opinion. That's why it was made the way it was. Even the behind the scenes, like, part of the marketing was like the behind the scenes. Look, we made everything practically for the most part, you know.
Well, that's something I do appreciate was the usage of practicals in this.
Yeah.
With a mixture between practical and CGI, which in my opinion is how CGI should be used.
I agree, but I mean, it's nice that they did it, but I think it was pretty much them, you know, trying to push it as like part of their marketing gimmick, that like to try to get those fans, because I know that's a popular thing that people have said over the years.
I think the fact that Abrams had so much practical effects in this movie shows that he understands what people loved about that original trilogy more than Lucas did.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Man, this movie's really, really polarizing.
Not as polarizing as the next one.
Yes, I know.
I don't mean Rogue One.
Yeah.
I think we should wrap this up now.
Yeah.
Well, that was our review of The Force Awakens. This isn't going to be the end of the video. We're going to cut to my friend Christian doing his short review on The Force Awakens, which ended up being a little bit longer than the other short reviews, which is why I chose to play it at the end.
Take it away, Christian. Other Christian.
Other Christian.
Not you.
Christian Feliciano is the guy's name.
After Revenge of the Sith, I thought to myself, you know what? Let's just let Star Wars movies die. Let's never do another movie again, because at this point George Lucas ruined it, and there's nothing they can really do to bring Star Wars back. We have the original trilogy. Those are great. We have some good video games, some good books, some good comic books, a nice little TV show. I said it's probably better if we just stick to those and forget about the movies. Let's never do another movie again, because it's just going to be just as horrible as the prequels. And nobody really knows what to do with Star Wars at this point anyway, except doing old stories or something like that. Then I heard that Disney bought LucasArts, and they had my interest. But I was still very skeptical because, of course, we had 3 horrible movies to go off of, and I thought to myself, okay, what are they going to do with Star Wars? But then, of course, you know, I was thinking, you know what, they have the Marvel films, they did fantastic with those. Let's see, you know, let's maybe give them a chance. Still remaining skeptical, but I said, you know what, let's give them a chance. Then the trailer hit, and I said, oh man, this looks amazing, but then I was still very skeptical because, of course, that thought in the back of my head of, holy shit, we had these same hype when the prequels were coming out, and I said, let me not, you know, invest too much in this movie. Let me not put too much emotions in it yet, because I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. And then I'm sitting in the theater. It's me and my friends, my siblings. We're about to watch Star Wars. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away pops up, and I'm like, huh. And all of a sudden, dun, da, da, dun, da, 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 and then the words start to come up on the screen. And I was like, yes! Yes! No politics, no freaking taxes. It was actually a Star Wars scroll. It was actually telling you something that was happening. And it was setting you up for the movie. And I was like, holy shit, J.J. Abrams, you are my man. I should marry you. But I'm not, I don't want to, because that would, of course he's not gay, and I don't want to go into that. But anyway, then the movie starts. And instantly, just amazingness just gets thrown in your freaking face, just like, and you just splash with it. That's what she said, because you get to see our buddy Poe, and he's dealing with a little droid that's cute as hell, and I'm like, holy shit, I love this droid. He's amazing. And then, we're getting some nice little dialogue between him and another character. I was like, holy shit, they fixed the script. They know how to write a script. I was like, this is amazing. It's only a sentence, but still, this is amazing. And then the goddamn First Order pops up, and we see Kylo Ren and a few stormtroopers pop out, looking sexy as hell. We get to see them slaughter a whole village, and I said, yes, Star Wars is back. And from then on, I was just so happy with what I saw in the film. Acting was decent. You know, it doesn't have to be amazing. I just want Star Wars acting to be decent. You know, dialogue is decent, even though there's some lines here and there, like, I've never seen so much green in the galaxy, and I was like, oh, okay, but still, the rest of it was good. It was actually decent. It actually, you know, it was actually interesting to listen to. The story was pretty good. I mean, yeah, you know, some people complain that it's a rehash of Episode 4, but I was like, you know what, at this point, they're being safe. This is the first new Star Wars film after Revenge of the Sith, and of course that little cartoon Clone Wars movie that, but still, you know, it was playing safe, but still, I loved it. It was a good way to go, I think, at this point, because you needed to kind of bring people back in to trust you again, and I was happy with that. I was like, hey, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? It's a good movie. We have characters I actually give a shit about. People are not just robots. This was so good to watch. It relieved me. I was so happy coming out of that theater, and I really thought the opposite of what I said when I went to go see Phantom Menace, which was, you know, I have just seen this amazing movie, came out of the theater just and thinking to myself, that is why I love cinema. This is why I love movies. Thank you, Disney, so much. And I was ready to worship them and put up nice little altars of Mickey Mouse and just bow my knee and worship them like a god. But then I remembered that I'm Catholic, so I can't do that. So I was like, oh, shit. But still, I was so happy with what I saw. This movie is so good. The story is good, man. It was good. It was a nice little cute story. And you had Han Solo returning, which was cool. And he was actually giving a shit. Yes, he dies, but I was like, yes, kill him, because that's what it was supposed to happen in the original. We have Rey, who is so cute. I love Daisy Ridley. She is adorable as hell. She's good. She's a good character. I like Rey. She's really good. Her fight with Kylo Ren was cool because, you know, it wasn't what we saw in the old ones where everything was choreographed. This seemed kind of more like how somebody would fight with a lightsaber. And then it left some mystery to how does she have these powers? Who's her parents? You know, they don't even give you her last name. So I was really into this. I was like, oh, wow, this is cool. We're going to get to see another reveal, hopefully, in the future. I won't spoil what I thought about the reveal, but still, at this point, I was like, wow, this is cool. Kylo Ren is a cool character. He was the whiny teenager that Anakin was, but actually with real emotion. Adam Driver felt like he was doing his job. You know, he was actually doing something. He was actually acting. He felt like he was this character. You know, you're watching him, and he does feel real. You know what I mean? And when he's doing the whiny shit, you're like, yeah, of course he's that character. That's what he's supposed to be. You know, he's not Anakin. Anakin wasn't supposed to be that. Kylo Ren is. And I was completely fine with that. The way he goes off and just destroys, you know, whatever the hell's in his way when he gets angry. I thought that was so good. I thought that was a nice new villainy way to bring him in, because, you know, sometimes you get these villains and they're a little bit too silly. You know, they get silly dialogue, kind of like how the Emperor was. I loved him, and of course the new characters. I loved Finn. It was a cool idea to have a stormtrooper who defected and now he's joined the rebellion. Seeing Carrie Fisher again, I love Carrie Fisher. I don't give a damn how old she is. I would have married her, man. I'm so sorry she passed away. Rest in peace, my love. But I love Carrie Fisher. The review of Luke, when we finally get to see Luke again, was so good. It was so cool. It was what I imagined, you know, how it should have been, where Luke is depressed and he's living alone. And, you know, I mean, it was a good reveal. I mean, we didn't have too much of a story, but we kind of got what happened, you know, through the movie. We kind of got a little bit of a hint of what happened. You know, seeing our old friends again was nice. You know, R2-D2, C-3PO, all that stuff. That was cool. Any problems? Not really. Not really. I don't really have problems. I mean, I have some nerdy things that I like to go off on. It's not enough to really make me say, oh, you know what, this movie's not as good as I wanted it to be. No, it was everything I wanted it to be. I love this film to death. I just love it, and thank God for Disney for making this film. How the other ones are, I won't spoil that, but at least we got Force Awakens. I watched that movie so many times. I love that movie, and I recommend everybody go see this. If you haven't seen it already, which if you haven't, I mean, come on, man, you got to see this movie. And if you have seen it, watch it again. You know what I mean? It's a really good movie. I know there's some hate for it. Hey, you know, haters are gonna hate. What are you gonna do? But I love this film, and I definitely recommend everybody watch this film. This is amazing. The tone is right. It has that level of darkness, but with some nice humor, and the jokes were actually funny. That was the interesting part about it, because some of the Star Wars films, the jokes are not that funny, but this one, it had humor. I was laughing. I felt tense at some scenes. It was dark at some scenes, but with a nice balance. And hey, the whole thing works for me. I know I sound like I'm a little girl right now, but I love this film. I just really do. And thank you so much for listening to this review. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Christian, for allowing me to be in this review. I appreciate it, man. And yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. Bye-bye.
I'm a fucking Sith Lord, bitch!